Look at this. We got Jeff Kortes in the building for Retention University Conversation. Jeff, we're no stranger to working together on retention, no stranger to working together on a variety of things. Can't wait to talk at this conversation because so many people are struggling right now to keep their best people. But before I do that, rather than have me intro who you are,
I'll tell you what, they're struggling to keep any people. How's that? Not even your best people, right? I mean, that's what it boils down to. So yeah, I mean, it's a real dilemma for people.
Yeah. Well, let people know first because, I always big you up. If anybody asks me about Jeff Kortes, I'm like speaker, author, top ranked Google expert. Do you even like the term guru? I don't know if you like the term guru.
Yeah, I like to think I have a little more humility than that, but I mean, I know what I do works, and and that's the bottom line. As long as it works for my clients, that's the key.
All right, well, tell people a little bit who you are, though, because they'll be confused. They'll go, Jeff, Randy, maybe I've seen him do some stuff before, but who's Jeff Kortes?
Well, Jeff Kortes, I mean, I was an HR leader for 25 years, was in the C-suite when I left corporate America, started my firm 15 years ago, and I originally started in the search business, and I realized at one point that I knew a tremendous amount about retention and culture. And because I'd done those things as an HR leader, and started reaching out to people, and I was successful in solving their problems. I mean, I'll brag a little bit here. I mean, people embrace my philosophy of crap, caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. They see their turnover drop by up to 80%. I mean, just incredible numbers. Put money on the bottom line. Solve business problems so that they're not restricting their growth because they can find people, but then they can't keep them. So, I mean, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I mean, on a personal level, I mean, I'm a United States Army veteran, and right now I'm a competitive power lifter as well. And I'm loving what I do, between work and my private life. Hey, life's good, man.
Well, I have an unfair advantage, Jeff, because I have gotten to work with you for how many years now, and I've gotten to see your retention. I've gotten to see all your different. So I have an unfair advantage for maybe most people that would ask you questions because I've seen a lot. Now,
right. I don't know. We worked together probably what 4 years or so
together. Even more, maybe. I think actually we did our first speech, which was on how to attract, retain, keep, and deal with millennials back when that was like the crux of everybody.
You got to tell them, how do I really know you from the very beginning? That's kind of a story that most people are surprised. But go ahead. I think it's worth telling.
That doesn't count for working together, but I've known Jeff for most of my life. So like you look at me and you're like, how long could you have known him for? At least 3 decades, maybe more, because his son and I went to grade school together. So I first met him maybe first or second grade, and I started coming over by their house. I know now Matt's moved on. He's doing all these other things. He's busy. He's off in other states, and you and I are working together all the time.
It's so despite funny. The fact that I've known you since you were 5, I still work with you.
Yes, it hasn't turned you off yet. But no, it made me think of something. Have you ever heard the story about about Einstein? You're like, are you comparing me to Einstein? Einstein and his chauffeur, where his chauffeur did his speech for him. Did you ever hear that story?
No, I have not.
So, it's like the thing of Einstein was traveling with his chauffeur, and he has to do another university speech, and he's like, oh my goodness, I'm so sick from whatever the night before and whatnot, I'm just going to have to cancel. And the chauffeur said to him, well, hey, I've seen your speech hundreds of times. I could do it. Why don't you let me do it for you? So he's like, all right.
Yeah, I know where this is going.
He goes up on stage, he kills it, he nails every point, he explains everything. But when it gets to Q&A, they ask him a super in-depth physics question. And his response is, hey, that question is so simple, even my chauffeur could answer it. And the chauffeur pointed to Einstein and had him answer the question. That would be like, that would be what we would do, Jeff. If I impersonated you and had you in the crowd.
You've heard, I mean, I remember when we did a 10-day road trip and did seven associations in 10 days.
That was
So you've heard my stuff a ton.
Yes. So I could do that, but I won't do that because I have you here. And so give us something, because I think that small businesses, I think actually, I don't, let's retract that. If you have people working for you, you are at risk of losing them, because this world that we're in is unstable. It's kind of scary for the work environment. It's never been like this, maybe in 10 years or something, maybe since '08 or something. It's very scary place for a lot of different people. There's a lot of uncertainty. And I even saw something, I think it was at the end of 2023, it was like when they polled people, 53% of people said they were thinking of leaving their job. That's staggering. Like they're thinking of
The
changing
numbers
their
are
job.
incredible, Randy. Yeah.
Yes. But so give us just some stuff, just something maybe just to start off with, even any kind of philosophy, anything you want to say. You can pontificate about retention, because you are the guru on this. You've been in this for longer than even you and I
Probably
have
about
known each
40
other.
years now, man.
So give us some stuff that maybe where it starts, where you start having retention problems. How do you even know you have them? And then what are some ways to maybe chip away? Or like, where would you start to unravel this?
Well, the first thing I always tell my clients is what you want to do is you got to start measuring your numbers. I mean, what's your turnover like month to month? Are there peak seasons where you lose more people than others? Do you lose them in the first 60 days, 90 days, whatever that is? But if you don't measure it, you're not going to get any better. I mean, I work with clients that all of a sudden I'll say, well, what's your turnover? And they don't know. Well, to me, that's problematic, because if you don't know where you're at, how are you going to get better? So by starting to measure, and you can get a feel for, well, what's going on? Why are you losing people? And generally you will hear, you don't have to do, I will tell people, you don't have to do exit interviews. If you're attuned to your workforce, you will know where your problems are. If you're out there, you're strolling around in the organization, I don't care if it's a tech firm or a construction site or a manufacturing site, doesn't matter. If you're out there and you're talking to your people, you'll understand why you're losing people or why you're not. And then, well, in my case, I apply the CRAP philosophy. Everybody talks about money. And yes, money is important. You have to have parity, and you need to be in line with competitors and things like that. But the reality is, most people do not start looking because of money. It's some other incident. I call it a MOHI, a moment of high influence. Something that so angers them that they go home, type in the laptop, go on Indeed, Monster, doesn't matter where, but they type something in and they start looking for accounting clerk or electrician or cybersecurity expert. It doesn't matter. They type that in, and once they do that, they're already gone. Because then all of a sudden they will start to get more and more overtures from people, and it's only a matter of time before they leave. And I always talk about Clydesdales and donkeys. Your people that are Clydesdales, high performers, even solid performers, not people that aren't problematic, but good, solid people and high performers, they're the mainstay of your organization. And what happens is, I will tell you, in this economy, and if you think it's going to get any better, it's not. I mean, what it boils down to is in this economy, a Clydesdale, high performer, solid performer, they can be gone within 30 days. I mean, I've got clients, manufacturing clients. If a CNC machinist goes on and posts a resume or starts looking at something, they'll be gone in a week or days. It's that stark. So, again, that's again, you gotta make sure you're taking care of those people. And the best way to take care of those people, as you know, I mean, I talk crap all the time. Caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. And I learned crap back in the mid 80s. I worked for a visionary, and this guy was amazing. I mean, and as I like to tell people, I refined my crap over the last 35 years and gotten better and better at it. But it's really about caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. You do those four things, and you're going to have less turnover because your people aren't going to start to look. Because once they start to look, they're gone.
Mm. And one of the things, it's like the biggest thing is people don't even pay attention to it. They have their head buried in the sand half the time, or they'll say things like, that's just the cost of doing business. Everybody in this industry has the same turnover. Like they give themselves so many excuses for not addressing their employee problems. They're like, yeah, people aren't loyal. Like any excuse, like there are truth. Like you can't say an excuse if there's absolutely no validity to it. So they find one kind of grain of truth or money, like you brought up. They find one little thing. They hold on to it and go, well, can't do anything. People just aren't loyal anymore. Can't pay as much as this other big company. So there's so much of like an ostrich syndrome, right? It's like they put their head in the sand.
Or you know what I call it, right? You know what I call it when they do that.
Tell it to us.
The few good men syndrome. Truth. A lot of people can't handle the truth. They're in denial. I mean, and I hear all manner of excuses. And well, people aren't loyal anymore. You mentioned that one. I mean, that's a huge one. Well, that's ridiculous. In my opinion, companies have killed loyalty by the way they act. So if you're acting with caring, respect, appreciation, and praise, you are going to be the exception. Because again, most organizations don't act like that. And if you're giving your employees crap, they're not going to have a reason to start looking unless you are dramatically underpaying your people. And when I hear the things about the industry, well, okay, if the industry is at 20% turnover and we get in there and we start giving people crap, all of a sudden our turnover can go from 20 to 10%. Think about the competitive advantage you have within your industry if you can do that. If you're 50% better than your people, you're going to kill it in your industry because you're going to get better quality because people aren't quitting. You're going to get better productivity because they know their jobs, they know what to do, they have that tribal knowledge, and you don't lose those people with that knowledge. All those things start to roll together, and what it boils down to is you got to stop making excuses. If you're losing people, you're losing them for a reason. And I will tell you, most times it's not money unless you are dramatically underpaying your people.
Well, you just hit on it. What if you are just like everybody else? Then you're going to lose people at the normal rate. What's the industry standard? Do you want to be the industry standard?
Exactly.
If you were a restaurant, right, you're like, oh, it's high turnover. We only get college kids. Like there's good turnover and there's bad turnover. But if you're experiencing turnover and someone else is experiencing turnover, right there, you can differentiate yourself. You can reduce that compared to other people, and you can beat your competition because you've kept all the knowledge inside of there, because you've kept people that have been there a long time. Everyone knows when you hire someone new, there's so much cost, not only just to find them, not only just to train them, all the things they screw up, because they're going to screw things up in your environment. Even if they worked in a similar area, they don't know your systems, they don't know your processes and your procedures. Right. So there's going to be cost in productivity just by losing people. It's almost incalculable. Help me out. Incalculable.
That's why I talk about measuring things, right? I mean, and I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm working with a school district in the United States, good sized district, and bottom line is they were experiencing 15% teacher turnover. So the churn was costing them a bundle of money to bring people up to speed. It was hurting outcomes in the schools, all manner of things. And what it boiled down to is we focused on that teacher turnover, and we said, okay, what do we need to do differently? I mean, you don't want to be rearranging the decks, the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Okay, you got to make some significant changes, and we did. And bottom line is in 1 year, we lowered teacher turnover from 20% down to 5%. Saved the district almost $500,000 a year. Huge ROI. And then they were able to pump that money back in and say, okay, how can we even make this better? And so it starts to perpetuates itself. It's a snowball. Once you get that snowball rolling downhill, it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And that's the key. But you have to take off the blinders, say, look, we've got issues. Let's stop moaning about our issues and let's do something about it. That's the key.
But, this is an idea I've stolen from you and I've used with a lot of people, is that they're recruiting machines. They have just this machine that feeds people into the grinder. And it's like, hey, you could actually, and then they complain about who they get, right? You could recruit better. You could find better people. You could be more selective if you weren't hiring, if you weren't going, oh my God, we just need a warm body with a pulse and a breath, if you kept the people that you have. So that's the biggest thing. You can be a better recruiter, or you can, even if you have a recruiting machine in your organization, or if a manager has to do it, which is always fun, right? To take
right. If you're an HR manager, you're there by yourself, and maybe you have a clerk that works for you or a generalist, depending on what it is. You're going to be you just don't have the manpower to do things and keep churning people. I mean, what I find is, and I emphasize this to anybody I talk to, and when I talk with associations, I emphasize, if you only got so much energy and so much time, focus. I mean, you can't stop recruiting, don't get me wrong, but focus on your retention, because if you can shut off that turnover spigot, when you do that, all of a sudden it enables you to be more selective. It enables you to do a better job of assimilating people in the organization, all those things. And once you do that, all of a sudden you're going to see things turn around, and you're going to get better people. You're going to be able to spend time to help them assimilate in the organization. And when you do that, all of a sudden your turnover continues to drop. I mean, it's logical, but we find it easier to recruit than we do to retain. So to your audience, Randy, I would tell you, if you have to focus on anything, focus on retention first. And that's what I did when I was an HR leader. I mean, I said, we've got to stop this turnover. It's maddening. It's frustrating. So focus on retention first.
You might even be in an area. So Jeff and I were training a group of people. This was a rather large roofing organization, and it had gotten to the point where in their area there literally was no one else, and they were having people starting to work there who had never used a hammer before on a roofing company. They're like, why are you sending me these people? She's like, I don't have anyone else to send.
This is all I can find.
This is all I can find. So you could be in a situation where you're in a smaller town and now you're not even getting that. Oh, my background fell down. How terrible.
The real Randy is exposed.
But no, talk to a little bit about that. What do you do when you're in a small town, when you've got those? And I'll see if I can fix my technical problems.
Well, you're in an area where you got limited people. What you got to do is you really got to square your retention house away. Because the other thing is if you're in a small area and all of a sudden people, you continue to churn people, the word's going to get out that your culture is not one of those cultures that people want to work in. And when that happens, you're in deep, deep, deep trouble. It's devastating, because then you can't even attract people. And when you can't attract people and you can't retain people, I always tell people, forget about the money. When you can't attract enough people to service your clients and your competitors can, you're out of business. And I mean, you talked about the roofing client that we'd work with. I mean, bottom line is it's not an easy job, but you got to find people who will be a good fit for that job. You got to take care of them. You got to treat them with respect and dignity. When they do a good job, you gotta tell them. You got to throw off all those old mindsets. And trust me, I'm not a spring chicken. And a lot of people, to give you an idea as to age, I mean, a lot of people, when I say a spring chicken, I mean, I'm not a kid. But I like to think that what I've done is I've kept up with what's going on, and I had the right philosophy going in. I've modified that philosophy. And again, I keep coming back to caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. When somebody's up on the roof and they've been up there all day and they come down and they're gassed. Man, let me tell you, the owner shows up at the site and says, hey, folks, I really appreciate the fact that you hung in there. It's 90 degrees outside, probably 120 on the roof. Just want to let you know I appreciate what you do. Man, that goes so far. It's unbelievable. Because you want to know why? Client we worked with, none of their competitors, owners ever did that. So all of a sudden they differentiated themselves. People started to hear about them, even people that weren't in the roofing business. And they said, sounds like a great place to work. They didn't think about the 90 degrees or anything, but outside, but they thought, I've heard great things about this organization. They started to develop a culture, developed a buzz around the business, and an excellently run business where the owner cared about people and all that sort of thing. Word gets out, makes you a retention, an attraction magnet as well as a retention magnet.
You know what it is, Jeff, is people are just negligent. They won't do something as simple that absolutely costs nothing. Actually, everything that you talk about in your program, and even everything we talked about in the Millennial program, they cost nothing. Nobody had to get approval. You don't have to go to upper management because they're all about how you treat people, how you have conversations, how you deal with problems. It's basically training and leadership. Yeah. It's how those leaders operate because everyone knows this. You don't leave the organization, even for money, even for all this, unless there's no opportunity there. You leave your boss. You leave the people that you have to work with in your team. If you don't like your team and you don't like your boss, it really doesn't matter how much you're going to get paid. That's like the three things: the people you work with, your boss, and the actual work you're doing. And you can only control so many of those, right? If you're on a roof, it's putting up roofs.
Yeah, I mean, it's bottom line. It comes down to boss, teammates, and culture. And oftentimes the culture creates the bad bosses. I mean, and you and I work together quite a bit. And I mean, that's why when I work with folks, I mean, I have them fill out a great boss checklist, 34 things that I have found and my clients have found that people look for in a great boss, because people quit because of the boss. Then you got to take a look at your teammates. You got a lot of gossip going on, backbiting, all manner of things. And overall, what is your culture? I mean, do you value your people? Do you tell them you value them? Do you treat them with respect, or do you disrespect them either knowingly or unknowingly? And do you care about them? I mean, deep down in here, people are very forgiving. If they know you care and you make a mistake, well, okay, you're human. But if they know that you don't care about them, you make a mistake, they'll say, oh yeah, same old BS, right? That's what happens. So it's what it comes down to is your teammates, your culture, and your boss.
Yes. What do you find people are the most resistant to changing? Because I think a lot of people will put money, sometimes good money after bad money, but they'll focus on something that's not the problem to fix an underlying problem. Like say they've got jerks for managers, they'll be like, well, we've got to do this for training to get these people to be better. And that's not the problem. So it's like they'll be focused on the wrong thing. Culture, and that's also a monster. Maybe that's a part of it too. HR people don't want to take on reshaping the whole culture because you can't do it in a session. You can't do it in a year. It takes.
Right. It can take anywhere from 3 to 6 years to change the culture. And although I will find my clients that I work with, I start talking with the HR people. Once we get into these initiatives, they love it because instead of pushing paper, they're doing the things that are very strategic when it talks about changing culture and doing things like that, that are very strategic and are more high level as opposed to just pushing paperwork and recruiting and doing all those sorts of things. Once they realize it, they say, I'm having fun.
You mean they
have fun. And then they see the success and they even have more fun.
You mean they're not just
You know,
sending out an engagement survey or what you said, an exit interview? I mean, that's the biggest problem. I think that it's good to have some of those things in your process. They're like a tool in your tool belt, but they're not the cornerstone. And an exit interview, how are you making sure that the people aren't just lying to you? Like they almost have zero reason to tell you the truth of why they left. There's
yeah,
how does it benefit them?
yeah.
Um,
What I find, Randy, is exit interviews are okay, but the problem is most people are smart enough nowadays. They don't want to burn bridges, so they'll give you a vanilla exit interview. The key is to know what's important to these people and why they're thinking about leaving before you're in an exit interview. You start talking with people. I always talk about strolling. You stroll the cube factory. Let's say I worked in a cardiology development firm, cardiology software development firm. And I used to wander through the cubes. You couldn't see anybody, but I'd pop my head in to the cube and say, "Hey, Kevin, how's it going today?" And all of a sudden they'd perk up, they'd talk, whatever, and got to know them. Then I just keep walking, stop in another cube. "Hey, how's it going today?" Let me tell you something. People will tell you how they feel if you're out there walking around. I use the term strolling. The boss that I talked about earlier was a visionary. He talked about strolling. Strolling was his thing. He says, you don't walk with a purpose. You just kind of wander around, you talk with people, and you do that, then you'll learn what's important to them so that you can, you can take care of those things so they don't leave.
Well, people know if you have an agenda. And if you're checking off some HR box of making sure you're having this many touches with your people for some formulaic retention thing, they're going to know it. Or do you genuinely care about them so you show up regularly to know who they are? Which is this is a hot debate right now. And I know that you and I have talked about it. So I'd love for you to share both your opinion, what you've seen, because on LinkedIn or on Forbes, all these different things, you know what they're constantly talking about? Oh, we've got to have remote work. We've got to have more flexibility. Can't go back. All these companies want to go back, and it was a huge mistake. And you and I have talked about maybe what's the best way to keep people. And even how many years ago? It was 10 years. I'll just throw 10 years. It wasn't 10 years ago. It was 6 or 8 years ago. We talked about flexibility. So flexibility is absolutely huge, which is remote work, which is hybrid work, being as flexible as you can, but there's a lot of downside to working from home. And I see, again, whatever my feed is filled with HR people. So it's constantly about how everybody's so stupid for making people go back to work. But I know you have maybe the exact opposite opinion on that. Please just share it. What do you think this new world we're in? We are in a new world, right? There's hybrid options. There's work from home exclusively. Like, what do you think is kind of the best way? And then obviously there's, if you're a roofer, there's no, you're working at the home, not from home. But just for people that have even that potential, what do you think about it? How do you navigate those waters? What are the problems and what should companies be doing?
Well, I think the biggest thing is when you start talking about remote work, when I started hearing all these organizations saying, "Oh, well, we have our people working remote," the problem is then people aren't interacting. How do you grow your young people if they're not around to watch what their boss does, how their boss leads, all those sorts of things? If they're, remote work can be, in my opinion, can really set you up for failure down the road. The other thing is remote work. If everybody's dispersed, you can kill the corporate culture, whatever the culture is that you want, because nobody's interacting, nobody's talking about it. There's not that bond, there's not that camaraderie, there's not that esprit de corps. And once that disappears, then it's just a job, right? And when it becomes just a job, most young people don't want just a job, right? They want something more. And it's kind of crazy. I refer to my clients. I mean, most of my clients, if you got people who can work remote, right? I mean, again, like you said, roofing company, hey, you got to put the roof on, right? I mean, your folks got to be out there. But your other people that can work remote, most of my clients will not let people work remote more than 2 days a week. And the other thing is, and I am just adamant about this, leaders should not be working remote. How can you lead if you are not around your people? If you have your people in the office, you're working with them, you can talk to them, you get to know them, what makes them tick, why they might think about leaving, all those things. You don't have that with remote. Yes, you can develop it with remote, but it's not nearly effective. Because I've worked with I've worked with software companies, and what they found was they went to 5 days remote, and all of a sudden the relationships disappeared, the camaraderie, esprit de corps, all those things started to disappear, and it was just a bunch of people as opposed to a team and an organization. So, I don't think that 5 days a week is going to happen, in office anymore, because there are some benefits of working remote. That way you're not stuck in unfortunately now what it is we do all these Zoom meetings, and what happens is the advantage of being remote, where you could actually have some focused time, has started to disappear. And we're starting to wonder, okay, is this really the best way for us and for our culture?
No, you hit a lot of things right there. It definitely is a big challenge. In an ideal world, as long as you didn't have a huge commute, showing up into the office is absolutely the best. I think for some people, that's their biggest thing. I'm losing an hour and a half a day in travel. Well, it's tough because you might be somewhere where you don't want to live closer to where corporate office is for a variety of reasons. You want to be in the suburbs. You want those amenities for your family. And
right.
So I get it. And even for me, everything I do is remote, and I absolutely love the flexibility. However, there is no water cooler time. There are those accidental things. There's not the pizza party. You can't send me an Uber Eats and create camaraderie, right? Uber Eats shows up at home. I appreciate it. That's awesome. But it doesn't, I'm not eating pizza with the person who works in a different department. I get to know them a little bit better, and I get to find out, well, I would never interact with them, but here we are. And so, hey, what do you have to do with that? Oh, really? That's your struggle. That's your challenges. Now I have more empathy for that. Now I've built another relationship where if I need to reach out, it's not this scary person. I don't know who they are. There's a name, there's a face. So I don't think.
Well, how can you learn from that person if you're not around them any? Again, I'm concerned that we're killing a generation of leaders. I mean, to me, that is scary. We're not showing young people how to communicate, all those skills that are going to be necessary in order to progress in an organization. So we could be facing a void where all of a sudden our leaders aren't ready to lead. And that's scary.
You remember, Jeff, when I told you that one of the places that asked me to train their people, which was a healthcare provider, one of their chief concerns was that their people who work in the front and deal with the clients, they don't smile. Can you teach them that?
I smile all the time. I mean, yes, but you can teach people that. You can teach people and get them to understand that smiling is actually important.
What's funny about it is that's not something you had to do ever before, but it was a very obvious, normal human skill that you developed somehow through your life of human interaction that has been lost, and not completely lost, but there are some people who just don't do it. They don't know some of the common and basic things. So your concern that people could be losing very important skills is 100% real if people can forget how to smile when someone comes up and how to greet them properly. Right. And so you can. I actually had a whole segment on the importance of smiling, and we really kind of hammered it home and how it makes people feel and why and how it makes you feel. Like if you're happy and engaged, you handle problems better than if not.
Right.
Just like a lot of things. So, but back to your point of we could be losing a whole bunch of skills. I think that's a very real thing. Companies have to think about that, because it's also when you're remote. You talk about this with people leaving where they'll leave for $1. When you're not connected with the corporation, even if you're a relatively loyal person, if you don't have any real ties with the people and someone offers you $5 or $10 grand more, or you get a headhunter looking for you, why not? Let's give it a try. Pretty good opportunity. Whereas before you might say, I love my boss. I love those interactions. I love working with this team.
Right.
I'm not willing to risk it. But if you're going to another remote job, you instantly have a buffer. So like, how bad could it be? Even remote work can have
Right.
toxic behavior, but you're definitely insulated. So it might be like you're just trading and now you're trading up. I think that's one of the big risks is you start getting a lot of mercenaries. Like I even saw a post on this
Yeah.
and I had to challenge it where they're like, however they worded it, it was like a success strategy for your career is hop around. Just hop around and keep getting your 10% increase every year instead of your 3. And it's like, shoot, they're absolutely right, but I don't like it. Like, yes, you're going to get paid more every time you jump to another thing, but you're not building any momentum. So
Well, and most people, when they're jumping from place to place, they're I hate to say it, they're usually miserable. I mean, because there's no relationship, right? They don't have any comrades in arms. I mean, it's just it's crazy. I mean, I worked again. My boss, who I talked about, who taught me crap, right? Caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. He always said, people don't quit people they're loyal to, bosses they're loyal to. They quit nameless, faceless organizations. And unfortunately, when you start going remote, you start to create that nameless, faceless organization. Randy, did you fall asleep?
audio not come through?
Yeah, now you are. Okay. I thought maybe you decided to take a nap.
The wizard, the curtain keeps falling. No, with that, he also taught you about how to drive loyalty. So I was just curious if you could speak more about that, of how a leader can drive that loyalty.
Drive. Explain it. Drive specifically. What are you looking for?
Like you've got a group of people. Let's say they are in person. Let's say they're remote. What are the things that you can drive loyalty and create a subculture inside of your culture? How do you drive loyalty?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is you got to be out there. You got to be talking to your people. You got to understand them. You got to know their story, why they come to work. I mean, I love, again, when I work with new clients, I love to wander around and talk with people and say, aside from money, why do you come to work here? It's fascinating what you hear. Better than any exit interview, because you start to get a common theme as you talk to enough people and say, hey, these are the things we're doing right. These are the things maybe we're missing. I mean, so I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in talking to your people and asking them. I mean, we don't do that. It's like we're afraid to ask because we don't want to hear what they have to say. My few good men syndrome scenario. But I mean, I think getting out there, talking to people, when people need you, and you need somebody to listen. Listening is a big thing. If you're a good listener, and then you respond to the needs of your people because you actually have listened, that's huge. If you're knocking down obstacles for people, and again, it comes down to listening. If your person comes in and says, hey, I'm struggling with this, man, such and such is happening and it's getting in the way of this. Well, knock down that obstacle for them, and communicate with your people. I mean, communication is huge. Again, we do a horrible job on communication. As a matter of fact, I just saw a survey this morning that talked about like 70% of the people out there don't feel their organization does a good job of communication. And that's easy to fix, but you just got to get after this stuff and work it.
I think people don't communicate. It does seem like that would be the easiest thing to do. Hey, we can see this blind spot. People keep complaining because they'll tell you that things aren't being communicated that should be. So what can they do, or why don't they even communicate? Like, what is the reason? Is it fear? Is it that they want to keep the control? Like, what is is it literally negligence?
I think part of it is it's easier to lead when you don't talk to your people. You're not really leading, but it's just easier. I mean, you don't have to respond to the tough questions, but you want to respond to the tough questions because those are the things that prompt people to think about quitting. I mean, I always used to joke about the fact that when I was an HR leader, I loved it when people brought up problems because the more stuff they brought up to me, the more stuff I could solve. And it showed them that I really cared and gave a rip. And I really, wanted to make their work life better. And that's huge. So I'm always, again, talk to your people, ask your people what obstacles they have, all those things. You just got to get out there and again, the boss that I talked about being a visionary, this guy talked about he used to say, get out of your office and talk to your people. I mean, it's so simple, but it's profound.
You just hit on one of the first things you ever taught me way back before we were speaking, way back before we were training, when I was just a entry-level manager. I went from working in a place for a year to getting promoted to a team of people, and I couldn't get them to do anything I wanted because I was an ignorant young leader who didn't know what the heck I was doing.
You knew it all.
It wasn't so much that I knew it all; it's that the style.
You thought you knew it all.
Probably. The style that I was using was the problem, and it was such a simple fix, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me, but it was, I would have a new edict, I would have a new thing, a new procedure, a new thing we had to do, and what I would do is just sit at my desk, sit in my little office area, and I'd craft up the best email with all the right answers and all the different pieces and boom, 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 and I'd hurl it into the cubicles where they were. And then about 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, you wouldn't even get out of the office.
No, and I could see the cubicle. It would bubble. I could hear it bubble, and I could hear people murmuring, "Oh, did you see that? Why,
what is this Walensky guy doing now? Is
exactly." So this was one of those examples where we're sitting on your back porch, having a gin and tonic, having a conversation. I'm telling you how much I hate my people because I can't get them to do anything. Probably how much they hate me, and how frustrated I am. And you gave me some simple sage advice. Do you remember what it is now with this story?
Well, I said, I told you to get out of your office and talk to your people.
You gave me the same advice.
I passed that wisdom on from, one of my earliest bosses. And it's so simplistic and so fundamental that people think, everybody's looking for all these fancy solutions.
Yeah.
Another thing he always talked about was forget fancy fads, focus on the fundamentals. And that's what I did during my career as an HR leader. That's what I do with my clients. Let's focus on the fundamentals because most organizations don't even get the fundamentals right.
They don't even get blocking and tackling right.
They don't get blocking and tackling right.
So how that I'm just gonna have to give up on.
Then you got to give up on that thing.
How this ended up resolving is that I was actually able to have meetings, have face-to-face. I would not hurl things because it was more comfortable to me. I would have face-to-face meetings and I would tell people why. And I would let them give me feedback. I would let them say, hey, this is a concern I have. Or they would almost get to shape it and give feedback. And then I would get adoption. And then I would get where people would actually follow it because they felt like they were part of it. Didn't mean that they got to do what they wanted, but instead of talking to everybody else and getting everybody about how stupid it was, they got to voice that, and then I would get adoption. And I could say that when I left that job, one of the best compliments I had was from one of the gentlemen I hired, and he said, "It's been really impressive to see you grow as a leader." Because essentially what he wasn't saying is I was completely inept at the beginning, and we actually had a really
you were inept when I first met you. Now you're actually pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like now you actually have an effective team. You're leaving the team in a good place. It started from nothing. I started from knowing nothing, and then we built a team and cultivated and got people and had a culture. We even had such a strong culture that when someone was bad on the team, all the rest of the team would tell me they don't fit our culture, they need to go. And that was a good place to be. When your culture is so strong in the team that the poor performers, they get identified and they're like, you got to deal with them because all these things you've built that we like, they don't fit. And so that was a really good place to be towards the end of that.
Well, and that speaks to the fact that teammates, right? I mean, in your case, teammates actually were working for the good of the organization. and they were together as a team. And you know, we didn't say it to the audience. I mean, I knew you because at the time, I was doing a lot of search work, and I actually helped build Randy's team. And yeah, I mean, bottom line is, and I knew his existing team. So what happened was they wanted to make sure the team wasn't hurt by an individual, and worked very effectively. I mean, things really were humming.
I actually completely forgot about that, Jeff. Again, thank you for finding, because there were at least, you found quite a few people for us. There was at least 2 or 3 that were real rock stars, like A players. Others were like B pluses, and then this one particular one, I think we brought you in when it was time to let that gentleman go.
Yep.
He didn't fit like week or 2 with our culture. And people, this is the thing people don't realize. In the recruiting world, there's a lot of con artists. People will tell you everything. They've got this great background. They're smooth talkers. Right. They've been prepared well for the interview. And then you're like, yeah, let's give him a shot. But then, he was particularly oil and water. He was as soon as he got to work, you knew exactly what his ethic was. And we actually let him go when we were going to have a big ramp up. This is in a technology company. So we're going to have this big, we're bringing on all these new locations. We're going to have to install, we're going to have to work, 24 hours a day for a week. Like it was crazy. Even though the team knew that was coming, they would rather be short staffed than have that person working in our team because of the culture.
Yep. Hey, I hate to do this to your brother, but a signal just flashed up on my screen that said, I'm running out of battery.
Oh my goodness, Jeff.
The last thing I want to do is just black out on here, and
that's right. That's
really be stuck.
As soon as you we're getting close to, we've got 10 minutes left. As soon as you get to,
if I do black out, you know what happened, because I did not plug my machine in, but it must take much more juice when we're doing these things. So I learned a new something new today.
Yeah, no worries. This has been a great conversation, Jeff. This is only the beginning, because this conversation and the things that are going on in the world, it needs to be talked about, how to manage and lead in this new world, right. How to retain people. So we'll absolutely do it again, but that's okay. Hey, we can even cut it off before the screen cuts to black.
Right.
This sounds good. Anything else that you want to leave and kind of say before you lose power?
Well, one of the things I always talk about, and I close most of my speeches when I do this, and in case I'll put in a plug for myself, I speak all over North America on employee retention. But one of the things that I always close my speeches with, I say, remember, give your employees crap: caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. Why? Because crap works.
Oh, Jeff, that's so great. And it's so simple. It's simple to understand. It's tricky for people to implement, but as soon as they implement and they understand why they're doing it, they will reduce their turnover.
They'll see results.
They'll see results. They'll see results. So, hey, this is awesome. This is great. Let's call it there, Jeff. We'll do this again. This will not be the first time. Maybe I'll have a real background and I won't have all this craziness. Who knows?
Yeah, that looks okay. I mean, I'm down in my studio, down in my basement. So, I mean, it's not the background, it's the content.
That's right. We can put this on audio. No one will even know. Exactly. Jeff, I appreciate you so much. We'll do this again very soon. We'll have another topic on retention. There's plenty of things going on that we could spend a whole year just talking about it, but we'll do this again soon. Okay.
All right. Take care now.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye.